Red Bull just finished preseason testing, and what they revealed in Bahrain has completely changed the balance of power in Formula One. A brand new Ford power unit. A car built without Adrian Newey's daily input. And yet, the RB22 is running 12 degrees cooler than its rivals, pushing up to 15 km/h faster at the end of the straight without DRS, and showing almost zero tire degradation over a full race simulation. That should not be possible in year one. And here's the part nobody expected. After a hydraulic failure stopped the car for hours, Verstappen refused to drive until it was perfect. The next day, he returned, and delivered one of the most consistent long runs of the entire test. 1/10 of a second variation across 15 laps. That is not testing pace. That is dominance. But this is where it gets uncomfortable. Ferrari may still take pole. Mercedes may look sharp on a single lap. Yet over race distance, the data suggests something far more dangerous is happening. Because this car was not built to win Saturday. It was built to control Sunday. And if what we saw in Bahrain is real, the Red Bull Ford era has already begun. Subscribe now, because what this means for the first Grand Prix of the season will shock the entire grid. What happened after that hook is where the real story begins. Because once the headlines faded, the stopwatch started talking. And in Formula One, the stopwatch never lies. Let's go back to Barcelona. Not for the lap times. For the behavior. The RB22 rolled out quietly. No dramatic statements. No aggressive glory runs. Just controlled laps. Short stints. System checks. But something stood out immediately. The car looked planted. While other teams were visibly fighting instability on the main straight, the Red Bull stayed flat. No bouncing. No visible corrections from the driver. That matters. Because when a car is stable mechanically, everything else becomes easier. Tire management improves. Energy recovery becomes smoother. And most importantly, driver confidence builds instantly. Max got out of the car after those first runs and said the balance felt neutral. Neutral sounds boring. In reality, it is the most powerful word a driver can use during testing. Neutral means predictable. Predictable means repeatable. Repeatable means fast over distance. But that was only the surface. The real test came in Bahrain. Higher temperatures. Longer straights. More stress on cooling systems. This was the real exam for the new Ford power unit. And here is where most people expected cracks to appear. New engine supplier. First fully integrated Red Bull built power unit. Extreme packaging concept. If something was going to fail, it would fail here. And at first, it looked like it did. The hydraulic issue stopped the car for hours. The paddock started whispering. Analysts began questioning whether the tight bodywork was too aggressive. Was Red Bull pushing too far? Was this project rushed? But here is what changed everything. When the car returned to the track, the temperatures were stable. Not just stable. Lower than competitors. Reports indicate the Ford engine is operating around 12 degrees Celsius cooler than Mercedes and Ferrari. 12 degrees is not a minor gain. It changes aerodynamic philosophy. Because if you do not need massive cooling outlets, you can close the bodywork. And when you close the bodywork, drag drops dramatically. Less drag equals more straight-line speed without increasing engine stress. That is efficient speed. The most dangerous kind. And this connects to something even more strategic. Energy deployment. In Bahrain's long straights, several teams experienced clipping at the end of runs. The electric boost fades. Acceleration softens. The RB22 did not show that weakness. It kept pulling. Consistently. Telemetry comparisons suggest up to 15 km/h advantage without DRS at the end of the main straight. That is not hype. That is structural advantage. And here is the key detail. Red Bull did not chase the fastest single lap. They focused on race simulations. Long runs. Heavy fuel. Stable pace. Because championships are not decided in qualifying. They are decided over distance. And over distance, the RB22 looked calm. Controlled. Unstressed. But we are only scratching the surface. Because the car's aerodynamic update midweek unlocked something even more significant. And that is where this story becomes even more unsettling for the rest of the grid. The update arrived quietly. No dramatic announcement. No bold press release. Just a subtle modification to the side pods on Thursday morning in Bahrain. And that small change may have altered the entire competitive landscape. At first glance, the new side pod design looked tighter. More aggressive undercut. Cleaner shoulders. But the real magic was not visible from the outside. It was airflow control. The revised geometry redirected air more precisely toward the diffuser. Not randomly. Not broadly. Precisely. That matters because the floor is everything under these regulations. Seal the floor properly, and you unlock consistent downforce. Lose that seal, and the car becomes unpredictable. The RB22's new layout improved how air wrapped around the rear tires before reaching the diffuser. That reduces turbulence. It keeps the airflow attached. It stabilizes rear grip. And here is the part that connects everything. When the floor is sealed more efficiently, the car can run slightly higher ride height without losing downforce. That sounds small. It is not. Running slightly higher reduces porpoising risk. It protects the plank. It preserves tire life. And it allows drivers to attack curbs without destabilizing the rear. In other words, it creates freedom. Freedom under braking. Freedom mid-corner. Freedom on traction. Now combine that with the anti-dive front suspension. Under heavy braking, most cars pitch forward. The front compresses. The rear lightens. The aerodynamic platform shifts. The RB22 barely moves. The nose stays composed. The floor remains in its optimal window. That stability allows Verstappen to brake later. Not because he is reckless. Because the car supports it. And when braking points move 10 meters deeper into the corner, overtaking opportunities multiply. But here is where it becomes psychologically damaging for rivals. The car does not look dramatic. It does not twitch. It does not fight the driver. It looks calm. And calm cars win championships. During long runs, Verstappen's lap times barely fluctuated. 1/10 of a second variance across 15 laps. That level of consistency only happens when three systems align perfectly. Aerodynamics, energy deployment, mechanical grip. If one is unstable, lap times fluctuate. They did not. Which brings us back to something Verstappen admitted. He does not love driving it. He called it demanding. He said it requires a different style. That is revealing. Because it suggests the RB22 is optimized for efficiency, not comfort. It is built like a tool, not a toy. And tools are designed to achieve results. Laurent Mekies reportedly described the traction as unsettling. Unsettling because it feels almost artificial. The rear stays planted longer than expected. Power delivery feels continuous. And continuous power changes race strategy entirely. Because if you can deploy energy without clipping, you can attack lap after lap. You can defend without sacrificing battery. You can extend stints. You can force rivals into mistakes. Now step back and look at the bigger picture. New engine partner. New internal structure after Newey's reduced involvement. High expectations. Massive scrutiny. And instead of fragility, we see control. Instead of chaos, we see cohesion. But here is the layer most people are ignoring. Testing is not about proving speed. It is about hiding potential. And Red Bull was lifting on straights during fast laps. Deliberately. That tells you one thing. They are confident. Confident enough to conceal performance. Confident enough to prioritize data over headlines. And when a team hides pace in testing, it usually means they believe they already have enough. So the question shifts. Not whether the RB22 is fast, but how much faster it truly is. Because if this was the conservative version, what happens when they stop lifting? And that answer might redefine the opening phase of this championship. Now we reach the part that truly explains why the paddock mood shifted after testing ended. Because once the long runs were complete, and once the data simulations were processed, one conclusion started circulating quietly among engineers. Red Bull did not build the fastest car over one lap. They built the most sustainable performance over an entire race. And that difference is enormous. Let's break it down carefully. Ferrari looked sharp in qualifying simulations. Aggressive engine maps. Strong bite in very slow corners. Quick rotation in hairpins. On Saturday, they might look dangerous. But on Sunday, the story changes. During extended stints on the medium compound, the RB22 maintained low 137 pace while others drifted into mid 138s. That gap sounds small. It is not. Over a full race distance, that is the difference between controlling the race and reacting to it. And here is the critical part. The degradation curve was almost flat. Most teams show gradual lap time increase as tires overheat and lose grip. Red Bull's curve barely moved. Why? Because the car is not sliding. It is not overheating the rear tires. It is not stressing the fronts under braking. Everything is balanced around efficiency. And efficiency compounds over time. Lap after lap. Stint after stint. This opens strategic flexibility. One stop instead of two. Longer first stints. Undercut protection. Overcut opportunities. It gives the pit wall options. And options win championships. But let's talk about the mental side. Because Formula One is not only mechanical. It is psychological warfare. When rival teams analyze testing data, they search for weaknesses. They look for spikes in temperature. battery drop-off, instability under braking. Red Bull showed very little of that. Even the hydraulic failure, which initially triggered panic, did not repeat. It looked operational rather than structural. And that distinction matters. Operational problems can be fixed quickly. Structural flaws require redesign. There is no evidence of structural weakness. And that is what makes this unsettling. Max's comments also reveal something deeper. He said the car feels heavier in slow corners, more demanding. That suggests Red Bull accepted a compromise. They sacrificed a bit of low-speed comfort to maximize overall aerodynamic and energy efficiency. That is a deliberate choice. Because slow corners represent a small percentage of total lap time. Straights and medium-speed sections represent more. They optimized for where lap time truly matters over distance. And that philosophy is ruthless. Not glamorous. Ruthless. Helmut Marko's earlier comment months ago suggested that a Mercedes engine would win the championship. At the time, it sounded like doubt. Now it looks strategic. Lower expectations. Reduce pressure. Develop quietly. And then reveal consistency, not spectacle. So here we are. Testing complete. Data analyzed. Rivals studying the numbers. And the emerging picture is this. Red Bull Ford has delivered a power unit that runs cooler, deploys energy longer, maintains battery consistency, allows tighter aerodynamics, supports stable braking, protects tires, and integrates seamlessly with the chassis. That is not one advantage. That is a system advantage. And system advantages are harder to attack. But here is the final tension point. We have not yet seen this car pushed to absolute maximum in qualifying trim. We have not yet seen what happens when Verstappen stops lifting on straights. We have not yet seen how Ferrari responds when forced to chase instead of lead. Testing gives hints. The race gives answers. And if Bahrain confirmed anything, it is that the RB22 is not trying to impress the cameras. It is preparing to control the season. Which leaves one final question hanging over the grid. If this was Red Bull managing pace, what happens when they decide to unleash it?